This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 366.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everyone? This is Brandon, host of the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. David Green. David Green, what's up, man? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It is dumping rain over here, which is very odd for California. So I haven't
Is it
been able
odd
to
for
do a whole
San
lot.
Francisco in the winter? I feel like that's all it does.
Probably fog more so. But yeah, California in general, we don't get a whole lot of rain. It's you forget it exists until it happens.
Well, I understand that. Well, I escaped that because I didn't want to live in Washington anymore. And now I live in Hawaii.
I know why
but
I was going to tell you about the rain.
Oh.
Because I have two flips
What?
going on right now, and the rain is keeping the contractors
fancy.
from getting out there. I was wondering why I brought that up in the first place, but I just realized I didn't factor in for rain because we never get it.
So in other words, you were just starting a conversation so you could talk about yourself. So it's like, hey, did you do CrossFit? Oh, I actually do. I do CrossFit every day. It was that kind of thing, wasn't it? Admit it.
I have to fit my CrossFit in between not eating meat and having like a healthy, clean food
I
lifestyle.
believe you do. Well, you ruined my segue, so I'm going to do it anyway. Speaking of Washington, today's guest is Henry Washington. Like that? That was pretty good. That was pretty good choice.
Because Washington rains a lot. Yes. Nicely done, B.
Yes. Well, see? Thanks. Our guest today is Henry Washington, real estate investor out of the Arkansas. Am I saying that right? Arkansas?
No, it's Arkansas. You just don't know how to
Arkansas.
pronounce anything.
The Arkansas market. Super legit investor. I met him at BPCon 2019. I was really impressed by him in his story, and I said, you have to come on the podcast and tell it. The guy's he's got 40 doors in the just been doing this for two years. 40 doors, doing over half a dozen flips a year. And just has such a great way of thinking about real estate and growing his business. You guys are going to love it today. So hang tight for all of that. But before we get to today's interview with Henry, let's get to today's
Quick tip.
All right, today's quick tip is simple. Something Henry talks about in the show today. He actually landed his first deal. He's going to tell you the story. He landed his first deal simply by doing what this quick tip is. Tell other people what you're doing. We've said it before on the show, but I'm going to say it again because people still don't do it. If you're trying to invest in real estate, tell people, hey, I'm getting into real estate investing, or I'm trying to invest in real estate, or I'm a real estate investor. Do you have any deals? Those questions, or I should say those statements to people, are going to land you deals if you do it consistently enough. Let everybody in your circle know that you invest in real estate. And that is today's quick tip.
Quick tip.
And now it's time for the interview with Henry Washington. Again, so many good things in this interview, this story about how he got to 40 doors in the last just couple of years of doing it while still working a full-time job. Make sure you listen to his idea of like the deal funnel, how he's built that. In multiple different ways of getting deals and why that's so important. In the deal deep dive, he walks through an amazing property. I call it like the better than Burr. It's like even better than a normal Burr deal. You'll love that. And then in the fire round, we talk about something called we actually name it on the thing. I stole it from David. The 4C principles with contractors. So there's a 4C principle when dealing with contractors. And if you follow this mentality, this process, you're going to have a million times easier time of dealing with contractors. And you won't do what I did like last Friday night, which was drive around at 10 o'clock at night looking for an ATM machine to pay a contractor. Don't do that. Don't do what I did. Instead, follow the 4C principle. So hang tight for that. And without further ado, let's get to today's interview with Henry Washington. Mr. Henry Washington, welcome to the BiggerPockets podcast, man. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's get into your story. So you and I met at the BiggerPockets conference 2019, and I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast because his story is incredible, and that's how this came to be. So why would I say that, Henry? Tell us your story. Start at the beginning. What'd you do before real estate? How'd you get into it? Let's go from there.
Yeah. I've spent most of my career working in the IT industry, so I've done software development and data analytics for big retail mostly. And let's see. So I moved to Arkansas, where I'm at, in 2010. and it was just me, and I was here by myself, and I was working, and life was great. I'd make a paycheck, and then I'd spend a paycheck, and and then I got married. So I met my wife, and 365 days after the day we met, we got married.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, that went fast. And then I'd say maybe about 6 months into being married, uh, we had a conversation, and we're talking about what we wanted our future to look like, and family and kids and all that. And so, in the middle of the night that night, I woke up literally in a panic because, I'd gone from this single guy, just good job, educated, and now all of a sudden I've got a wife, and we're talking about having a kid, and I had no savings, like none. I had $1,000 in a savings account, and I knew that that wasn't going to be enough to support a wife and child. Like, if anything goes wrong, I was going to be in a tough place. And so, literally, 2 in the morning, started Googling like how to make extra money, and started Googling passive income and side hustles. And I came across a TED talk where a guy was talking about passive income streams. And the way he said there's tons of passive income streams, but he uses real estate and rentals. And I thought, we like real estate, we'll stop and look at open houses for no reason. So, why don't I look into this real estate thing? And so finally was able to go back to sleep. And the next day I reached out to a real estate uh, agent friend of mine who worked at the same place I worked. And she was super thrilled to kind of that I was into it, and literally brought me a box of books, and was like, pick one and read it. And so the one I picked was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Nice.
I read it and was hooked from there, and decided, okay, well, I'm going to do real estate, and I'm going to buy a rental. I figured I'm a people person. I didn't have any fears about being a landlord or what that was like. So I knew from there I wanted to figure out how to buy a rental property. And so that's kind of what got the wheels turning.
What do you think it is about Rich Dad Poor Dad? Because I mean, we talk about that on the show a lot, right? A lot of people, I mean, myself included in there, it changed our life and pointed us towards real estate. Though it's not a real estate book. Why is that?
Right.
What about that book made that such a thing?
So I think one thing I got from it that actually isn't technically related to my real estate background, but kind of, so I think it's super motivating. Like, it just motivates you as a regular guy to feel like I can do something powerful, right? And I can do something that's going to change my life and my family's life. But I think that one of the most important takeaways I took was the concept of paying yourself first. That's not something I had ever thought about or done before. I had always paid all my bills and then tried to save, and that worked for like 2 weeks, and then it didn't work anymore. And so I told my wife, I said, hey, after reading this book, I said, let's just set aside 10% of our income first. We'll pay our tithes, and then we'll pay ourselves, and then we'll figure out the rest. And I said, we'll just put it in a savings account. I said, if something crazy happens, it'll be there. It's not like we're spending the money, it'll be there. And let's just try that. And let's continue down the real estate path. But if in 12 months I've never done a deal, I did the math on 10% of our income. I said, look at how much we'll have in our savings account. That's way better than the 1,000 we have now. And I mean, that was just a powerful thing. Taking that little step and watching that money grow showed me that that the words in the book were going to actually be helpful for me. And so I think it's just a motivating book.
You know, that concept of like paying yourself first, it's a common thing. And, like Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about it, and The Richest Man in Babylon talks about it. Dave Ramsey talks about it. And it's so simple, yet so powerful, right? And now a lot of people will say, well, I don't have any money to set aside for savings. But the fascinating thing, and Mike McAlevitz, who was a guest on the BiggerPockets business podcast recently, he makes this point about the reason we do that, even if it's just $1 or $2 or $5, is because it's more of a mental game than it is a tangible one. Like, you're not getting rich necessarily off 10% of your paycheck going into a savings account, but it's more of a mental thing. So what did that do mentally to you?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to say. Is the thing I think is a key for an entrepreneur to be successful, right? It's mindset, right?
Yeah.
It's I think differently now, 2 years into this real estate journey, than I ever thought before starting, right? And uh, it's just a lot. It's the power of knowing you can do something, knowing you can take nothing and turn it into something, right?
Yep.
And when you know you can do that, it kind of takes away from some of the fear that investing can bring, right? And the one thing I tell people I like to do now that I never did before is when I do have a fear about something, when I have a fear about an investment or a fear about making a decision, I try to write those fears down, right? I'll put them on a piece of paper because I want to see, I want it, I want to the chemical reaction of writing it down and then looking at it
Mm.
to say, okay, is this a legit fear? And I take those fears and then I write down what some of the actual uh, things I can do to alleviate those fears are. And if there's little things I can do to alleviate those fears that can help me take that step, then I know like the fear wasn't really a big deal. It was just something we just kind of have these predetermined fears in our mind that aren't really real. And so by writing it down and thinking through what are the things I can do to alleviate those fears, it kind of helps me get over them and it helps me to move forward and kind of keeps you out of that analysis paralysis or just
Mm.
fear for no reason kind of things that
Yeah.
entrepreneurs tend to get.
Yeah. That's really good.
I know a lot of people when they're learning, I want to learn something. They come looking for a step-by-step process, just like a formula.
Mhm.
Tell me, and I hear this all the time. Tell me, where do I get the deals? Like there's this idea that there's a website. If you tell me what the right website is, I'll go there. They have the deals and I can buy it. And it's that simple. And when people realize it's not that simple is when they lose heart. And I've noticed that the people like you, Henry, and we're about to tell people like what you've actually done in the period of time you did, which is where this credibility comes from that I guess we probably should have established before we started talking to. It's very, very impressive. Trust me. It is the mindset is what the common denominator is with the people that are successful. And the thing about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, to me, that really stood out was it was actually kind of an offensive concept to a lot of people, but it was that rich people think differently, right? That wealth is a result of how you think. Whereas we like to believe, well, wealthy people think that way because they started with wealth. And so that's why they think that way. But it's not. It's they became wealthy because they look at money differently. And that little thing like paying yourself first. I'm going to set aside 10%, 20% of my money, and I got to make it work with everything else. And if there's not enough, well, then I better get another job, or I better make coffee at my house instead of Starbucks, or whatever little change you have to make is what rich people do with money. They don't earn money through W-2 jobs.
Right.
They don't pay as much taxes on their money. They think about investments and something that will grow when they're not working. And really, if you learn to think like rich people think, what Robert Kiyosaki figured out was that you will get the results rich people get. And I don't know why, when it comes to money, it is so hard for human beings to get that through their head, because it's like that with everything else in life, right? If you want to get a better body, then you do what people who have good bodies do. You eat the food they eat, you work out that they eat, and boom, you get the body, right? We would never go to someone who's in really good shape and say, I'm not going to listen to your advice because you already look really good, right? Like, of course you think that way. But with money, that's what we do. Is like, well, he's just a rich a-hole. Why am I going to listen? He doesn't know what it's like to be me. Like, yeah, that's exactly why you should listen to him, because he doesn't know what it's like to be you. Your way doesn't work. Your way gets you the result you get. And I love, like, Henry, you have a talent for explaining this in very easy to way, understanding that you got to think like this. And actually, I'm looking through the notes, and you have such a solid, simple process for how to know when to buy, when not to buy. I'm really excited to get into this. Brandon, would you agree? Have you seen similar patterns with people that are successful?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely is. How many times do we hear people talk about that rich people are lucky, or, well, I'm not wealthy, so I can't invest in real estate? It's like, it's a simple mindset shift. So obviously, Henry, you made that shift by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. So let's walk through that. How did you go from that to now you get the education side, you're excited, you're motivated. What did you do then with that information?
The first thing I did was I decided to just tell people that I was a real estate investor and that I was buying rental properties. I hadn't bought a thing, but I wanted to put that energy out there because I knew that that's where I wanted to go. And I knew I was going to do whatever I needed to do to be successful. So why not go ahead and tell people that that's what I do? And so by doing that, a good buddy of mine came to me and said, "Hey, man, I heard you're buying rental properties." Said, "I have a house that I need to I need to sell. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, man, tell me about it. And so he had a house where he and his family lived. He moved out of that house to move over to the church campus where he was going to church, and he was living there to save money because he had plans of buying this larger property that someone he knew in the church was going to sell to him. And so he was saving the money, and he had gotten to the point where this guy had to sell that property. He had the money to buy it. He needed to buy it now, but for him to use the loan product he needed to use, he needed to sell the primary residence he had before. And so he said, I got to sell it. I've got a tenant in there. I was letting him live there so he could get his credit together and then he could buy it. And that never came to fruition. So I need to sell it. Here's what I'll sell it to you for. And I ran the numbers and it was a good deal. And I said, okay, well, I'll buy it. And we talked it over and I put it under contract. And then I panicked because I had no money. I had no money, and I didn't know how I was going to buy it. But I was just going to figure out a way. And so, and he understood this. Like I said, he was a buddy of mine. I said he knew it was my first deal, and but he trusted me to figure it out. And so I went and just looked into how I could buy this thing, where I could get money from, what I could sell, like how much I needed. And so once I figured I needed about 20 grand, I couldn't sell enough things to get 20 grand. So I called well, he's the business partner now. He wasn't at the time. He was just kind of like a mentor then. And I said, hey, I've got this deal. It's a good rental. I don't think I'll be able to come up with the money. Would you step in and buy it? Because, we need to help this guy out. And this is kind of when I got that first taste of that entrepreneurial mindset. And I got it from who then turned out to be my business. He said, this is a good deal. He said, I can buy this deal. I will buy this deal, but you need to figure out how to buy it. Go figure it out. And we sat on the phone and we brainstormed, and 401k came up. And I said, well, my wife has a 401k. And he was like, well, I think you can take a loan out against 401ks. And I was like, okay. So I did some research, called my wife. She called her company. They told her what she needed to do. She called me back and said, we can do it. And so she took out a 401k loan for the amount that we needed to close on the deal. I closed on the house. I kept the tenant in it. I raised his rents. And the new rent amount covered all my expenses and the loan payment back to ourselves for the 401k. So that house is paying us back with interest for that loan. So
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And what I love about that is it shows that concept of the rich dad, poor dad thing of the rich people say, or poor people say, I can't afford it. Rich people say, how do I afford it? And so you basically, that's what that mentor of yours was like, you need to start asking the question, how do I afford it? Which is where you started asking questions and saying, because this wouldn't have worked though if it wasn't a good deal, right? I mean, if this was a horrible deal, it wouldn't have worked.
Right. And what really got me hooked on it was, now I'm getting paid for an investment that I technically didn't have to use any money for. Yeah, we used some 401k money, but it was a little different. And then because we bought a good deal, I was able to take out a line of credit on the equity, and I've been leveraging that to buy other properties, either to flip or to burr. So that one deal has opened the door for me to grow exponentially.
That's cool. Now, did you buy that one for 20, or that was a down payment you needed to be able to buy it?
That was a down payment. I paid that one, and it was worth about 150.
Okay, that's cool. What did it rent for?
1,100.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, so what happened after that? You bought that first deal, and then you said, all right, I'm retired, and you kicked your feet up and did nothing.
yeah, exactly. No, after that, you kind of, I just had this energy, and I was like, all right, well, I need to get more deals. And so while I was going through that process of buying that home, I was also starting to build a marketing campaign. So I could do my first direct mail marketing campaign, because I wanted to start a lead funnel. And also at the time knew nothing about direct mail marketing. I just knew that I needed to find a way to get deals. And so I started my first direct mail marketing campaign, And at the same time, because I was putting that energy out there of I am a real estate investor, I had another deal come to me. It was from a local realtor who was in the same real estate investors association as me. He called me and he said, "Hey, I heard you're buying houses. I have a deal." And that deal turned out to be my first flip project. So simultaneously, I bought a flip and started direct mail marketing. So the flip, the flip was I've kind of heard you talk about before. We can get spoiled by our first flip.
Sure.
This is 100% that situation. So I bought the house for 190,000. It was a large house, so I knew I couldn't rent it and turn a profit on it. But it was a large house in a super desirable location. And the realtor had already figured out what the seller wanted to sell the house for. So I ran the numbers at that price, and it worked great from a flip perspective. So I bought it for 190, and it needed $40,000 worth of work. And I got to that 40 because I walked it with a couple of contractors. I had no clue walking in it the first time what it actually needed. So I took a couple of people with me that knew what they were talking about. So it needed about $40,000 worth of work, and I was able to have the bank finance. They financed the purchase and the down payment. So I didn't have to bring any money to the table, but they didn't finance the rehab. So I had to find rehab money. Again, I had no money. So this guy who was a mentor turned business partner, his name is Dustin. He had access to a line of credit. He lent me $20,000, or he lent me the 40 I needed to do the rehab. So I was able to basically finance 100% of the deal. We rehabbed the property and it sold for $325,
Whoa.
I believe. 325 in 2 days. Owner for sale by owner, and the buyer also didn't have a real estate agent. So
you just got to take all that as cash. I mean, save all that money.
And so I was like, yeah, house flipping's awesome. Let's go buy 100 more like that. I haven't found one that awesome since, but that first one was great.
That's how that works. And that's good because it builds up that confidence you need to just, start moving forward on it. That's actually fantastic. So, all right. So you figure out a way to get this deal done. In fact, for no money, because you borrowed money, the bank lent the money for the purchase and the rehab. And then the bank had the down payment. They didn't need a down payment. The rehab, though, you borrowed, you said, from a friend.
Yep.
And so you just did this flip. You made a bunch of money. I mean, how much profit was that at the end of the day? Do you remember?
I think after done, it was about 60,000.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. All right. So then you're also building this deal pipeline at the same time. Can you explain why is that important for people listening to this show right now? Because a lot of people just think in terms of one-off deals. They're like, I just got to get a deal. You're saying I want to build a deal pipeline. What do you mean?
Right. Absolutely. So I knew, and this is what I tell new investors all the time, but I knew that even though I was a new investor, no matter what strategy I wanted to do, whether it be rentals or flips or assignments, however I wanted to go about that business, the one thing I need is a good deal. And kind of what got me there was I kept going to the Real Estate Investors Association meetings prior to me doing any steps myself. And all everybody was saying was, there's no good deals. There's no good deals. I want to buy a house, but there's no good deals. And what that made me think was, they're not doing the work to find the good deal. So if I do it, I know I'll always have exit strategies because there's a bunch of people in this room who want deals who aren't going to go find them. Mm-hmm. So I'll go find them. Right. And so I knew that no matter what I do, I need a good deal. So I should focus on that. I should take whatever resources I have, whether that be time or money, and flood into creating a pipeline of deals. And then from there, I can, whatever my situation is, whatever my capital situation is, I can let that dictate what I do with those deals. Because if there's multiple exit strategies, I know that I'll make money on those deals. And so that's what I did. I wanted to start direct mail marketing. And since I knew nothing about direct mail marketing, I just listened to different podcasts and read different books. and I wanted to send postcards. I chose postcards because they were cheaper. I mean, I just didn't have a bunch of money at the time. As a matter of fact, I had no money to market. So I'll get into that in a second. So I wanted to send postcards, and I didn't know what I wanted them to say. So I literally just Googled real estate investor postcards, Google image searched them, looked them up, and picked what I thought looked good and was a message that I want to put on there, and jotted that down. Um, I decided to mail. So the criteria I chose to mail, again, I had done a bunch of research, and what I would do is I would jot down from these different podcaster things, like who these people were mailing for motivated sellers. And then I would go through that list, and if there was something in common with who everybody was mailing, that's who I decided not to mail, because I wanted to find people. I wanted people to get my letter who were getting letters from a bunch of people in my area. I wanted to find maybe a niche or somebody who wasn't getting marketed to all the time, because I was so new, and I figured I don't know how to compete with everybody. Find somebody who's not doesn't have a ton of competition in that space, then maybe I'll have a better chance at getting a good deal. And so at that point, everybody was mailing to absentee owners. And so I said, great, I'm not going to mail to absentee owners. And so I picked kind of the least common sources that I would research. And one of those was age for me, which turned out to work out really well. So I mailed to people with equity who were age 50 or older. And kind of what that brought to the table were people who were in situations where their house was catching up to them, or there was too much maintenance, and they were looking for a way to sell. Couldn't. There was so much maintenance with the house that needed to be done for them to sell traditionally, and maybe they were embarrassed by it. And so I got a really good return. I sent 1,000 postcards in my first direct mail campaign, and probably got 50 phone calls.
Wow.
And I'd say I looked at 10 or so houses, and I think I got 2 to 3 deals out of that first direct mail campaign. So it was a good start.
So once the phone starts ringing and you get people on the phone, I want to talk with you about what you do to get them under contract. But before, I really like your decision-making criteria. So can you explain to people how simple it can be when you're looking at a deal and you analyze it, and how you decide what to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I look at every deal that comes in from a lens of buy and hold first, because that's what I want. That's my bread and butter. So if I could buy every deal and keep it as a rental forever, that's what I'd do. So that lens for me is, if I can run the numbers and that single family home is going to pay me over $100 a door after all the expenses, I'm going to buy it. It just makes, for me, barring that the location makes sense. But from a number standpoint, over $100 a door, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to buy it. If it doesn't hit that criteria, but it may hit the, if I flip it, I could make $15,000 to $20,000, then I'm going to buy it so that I can flip it. Because if it hits that criteria, I can either flip it, or I can get that to another investor, because I know that'll meet their criteria. So, so when I'm going to evaluate a deal, or when I'm going to make an offer on a deal, I know at this price point, if I get the deal, I can keep it. If I get it at this price point, I can make money from a flip or at another way. So it helps me when going in with negotiations, because I can have multiple options for people.
Now, when you say $100 a door, is that putting a certain amount of money down, or is that no money down?
That's I do 15% down.
Okay. That's cool. All right. So what's great about this is it just shows, like, if you have a good deal, if you're out there hustling for good deals, you're going to get leads that are coming in. Like, you just put yourself out there, you did direct mail. Now, not everyone who sends 1,000 postcards are going to get 2 or 3 deals. But who cares, right? Like, you put yourself out there, you started getting leads coming in, you started getting deals, and then you get to put them through the funnel. Everything's a funnel, right? I always say that. Everything's a funnel. So you're like, all right, so this one, it's almost like sifting. Like, like as a kid, you're sifting for gold or whatever. And like, the big rocks get stuck and they go to the next pan, and then the middle-sized ones get stuck and they go to the next one. That's all you're doing. Is sifting for good deals. That should be the name of the show. Sifting for good deals with Henry Washington. Now, so like, Anyway, so you're able to say, hey, if this can work as a rental, great. If not, then I'm going to try it as a flip. If not, okay, I'll try it as a wholesale. If not, we'll let it go. And maybe even do you like pass things on to real estate agents?
Sure.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, because I'm not an agent, one of the things I did to build my team was, in order to know if you're getting a good deal, you got to run comps, right? I don't have access to the MLS, so I had to run comps. So I networked with realtors from the real estate association, and I told them, I said, hey, if you're willing to run comps for me, like any deals I don't buy that they don't need me, they need a realtor, I'll give them to you. And that's been a great way for me to be able to get accurate comps, because now I have a relationship with a realtor who will jump on my comps quickly when I need them run fast, because he knows that if it's not going to work for me, it may work for him, and he'll get a deal out of it, and he'll get a listing out of it. So that's been a great relationship for me. And then he lists all I don't do for sale by owners anymore when I'm done rehabbing them, but so he lists all my properties after I flip them. So it's a good, symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, it's solid. Very cool. Hey, where are you at right now in terms of your whole portfolio? Like, rentals, how many flips are you doing? Wholesales? What's kind of like your life look like?
Sure. I'm at about 40 doors from a rental perspective. And then we flip 6 to 10 houses a year.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I would say half of those are wholesales, where we're just buying them because they're good deals and putting them back on the market.
Yeah, wholesaling's fascinating, right? Because you're buying a property and then you're not going through a massive rehab.
Yeah,
you're just reselling
absolutely.
it again. So you're flipping it with no work. That sounds like the ideal scenario. And the reason you're able to do that again is because you're good at getting leads. You have a deal funnel. The deals come in the top. You sift through them. You get leads. You get things that are good. So let's go back real quick, because is direct mail still your kind of main avenue for finding deals today, or have you shifted away from that?
Yeah, direct mail. And I have a website, a lead generation website that I have a Google AdWords. So the Google AdWords helps the sponsored ad rank toward the top.
I want to talk about that. That's cool.
Yeah, and so I get a lot of leads through there. I'd say my best deals come from my website.
Well, okay, let's talk about that. So I want to also go back to the direct mail, but now that you brought that up, now I'm intrigued. You got a website, a lead gen website. Is that through, like, who's that through? Or is that just your own? Like
Through Danny, through Lead Propeller.
Lead Propeller. Okay, so so I have a Lead Propeller one as well. So you get the lead, you got a Lead Propeller website. People then either search Google or they come up on AdWords. Explain that process, because some people just have no idea even how Google ads even work. So
Sure,
what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, so once I got the website, I needed to find a way to get that website ranked in the searchings, right? And so you can do that a couple of ways. You can do it organically, right, through search engine optimization, by ensuring that you have all the special right words in your website or blog content or something that's going to help when people Google, help your website to come to the top. But that takes time, right? And so if you don't have the time for that, you can do a Google AdWords campaign. And so what that means is you basically pay Google to create or pay someone to create a marketing campaign for your Google page. And, you'll get a sponsored ad at the top when people search for whatever different types of words you put in. And so I, again, used Lead Propeller's Google AdWords team, and they were able to create just different ads for me. So when people search, sell my house fast or sell a house fast in Northwest Arkansas, my ad will be at the top of the search results, and it helps them to find me.
That's cool. And of course, like, you're paying for those ads. So do you have any idea off the top of your head, like what's your average cost to acquire, so to speak, cost to acquire a customer, cost to get a home? What are you paying?
Yeah, it depends. So it depends on like what their search was. So you pay per click. And then depending on what their search was, so certain searches cost me more money. I would say as a whole, I pay about $500 a month for my Google AdWords campaign. And I'd say during the busiest parts of the year, I might get 30 to 40 clicks a month, right? And during the slowest parts of the year, I won't, like right now, I'll get 5, 6, 7 clicks, just because not a lot of people are searching for selling their houses right now during the holiday season.
Sure.
Um,
Well, so if you were, let's say you spent over the course of a year, $6,000, $500 a month. Over 1 year, what do you expect? Like, what kind of number of deals are you getting from that source?
Almost 6 to 10 deals a year from my website.
Yeah,
So
man, that's amazing.
yeah, it more than pays for itself. It's
Yeah.
not like I said, it doesn't sound like a huge volume, but if you look at the profit margins on a deal versus what you're paying per month, it's well worth it.
Man, this is where like I wish more people understood like just the power of paid marketing. I mean, I've had so many conversations with people in the past where it's like, well, I'm not paying Google for an ad, or I'm not going to pay for that, this or that. And I'm like, if you paid me $500 and I gave you back $30,000, would you do that? And everyone's like, yeah, of course. Okay, well, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Now, it's not a guarantee, and that's where people get weirded out. But man, I love paid marketing like that. That's cool.
It's absolutely worth it if you're gonna do the work after you get the lead, right? And I think a lot of people. So part of the reason why I paid for the marketing is before I did it, I would search these things and then click on who came up, and I would call them, and most of them either didn't answer the phone, or if they did answer the phone, it was a VA or somebody who wasn't local, or they were just unpleasant. And I thought, great, that means if I get on here and I get my ad at the top of the page and I answer the phone and provide good customer service, then I'm probably going to get the deal.
That's smart. It's just it's a funnel. I mean,
Yep.
You get a certain cost per click, and then a certain number of people are going to call you, and a certain number of those are actually going to be interested, and a certain number of those are going to accept your offer. And the more you can improve each part of that funnel, the greater chance you're going to have of getting the deal, and the more money you make and the less you spend. And you've really seemed to have optimized that really well. I mean, 40 doors is no like small amount to do. And how many years? I mean, it's like 2 years now, right?
Just over 2 years. Yeah.
Jeez, like 40 doors. Now, are those multifamily? I mean, that's not like one 40-unit apartment building. Is it?
No. I think our largest is an 8-unit.
Wow.
Most are duplexes and single family homes. And the 8-unit is technically 4 duplexes. It's just on 2 parcels.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how are you going about financing all these properties? I mean, that's a lot of bank loans.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's most of them are small portfolio loans from banks. So we'll do the 15% down, and we'll finance them that way. We've got about 4 banks that we work with, small regional banks that we work with, and then a few are owner financed. So those have been great for me. I'd like to do more of those. But yeah, small portfolio loans and owner financing.
That's so funny. Yeah, so the other day somebody messaged me and said, I tried to get a loan to go through, or trying to get something. I don't remember what it was, but they said, and I kept hearing about these portfolio lenders on the podcast. So I finally just went out and called a bunch of local regional banks, and I found somebody, and they funded my deal. And I was so shocked. They were so shocked that it worked. And I'm like, I know, like this stuff actually works. Like if you go outside the big Chase, Wells Fargo, US Bank world and talk to local people at a local bank, they want to fund your deal. That's how they make money, is by funding your deal.
Right.
And a lot of other people are just going to the big dogs so that they can take those smaller deals that you got. And like you said, 15% down on a rental property because a local bank wasn't willing to do that, and you building relationships with them. Yeah, beautiful thing.
For that 8-unit, we only had to put 10% down because we bought it at such a discounted rate. So I mean, the smaller regional banks are they just can be more flexible, especially if your deal is a really good deal.
One thing I've heard that people do at these smaller regional banks, and it sounds too good to be true, but it's not if you think about it, is the bank will not lend to them on a loan to value of what you're paying for the property. They'll lend to you on whatever it appraises for. So on that $150,000 house you got, they would say, we'll give you 75% of that, and you may end up getting more than 115 to put down on that house, right? Like you may put nothing into that deal if you get a good enough deal. And it's just like Brandon said, and like you said, Henry, when you find the deal, all the other stuff falls into place. Of course, if you're buying a house for 50 grand that's worth 200, the bank's not going to make you put down 15% of 50 grand. They're getting like a 20% loan of value. They're going to give you a lot more there. And if they don't want it, well, somebody else will. Even if they let you borrow 100 grand, they still have 50% loan to value. It's a super good deal for the lender. So definitely do what these guys are saying and find the local bank that's maybe not doing a ton of business, especially for you, Henry, being in an area that I would consider a sleepy town like Arkansas. You may not get that in the Bay Area where everybody needs money, but out there, like Brandon said, those banks, they're not doing a whole lot. That guy's hungry. He wants to put food on his table. He's going to go to the board of directors and say, we need to give Henry this loan, aka I need to get some money right now. I need to get paid. And that's exactly right.
The power is in the deal. And that's why I tell new investors, especially if they're having the either fear of getting started or the analysis paralysis, if you focus that time and attention on finding a good deal, that is going to motivate you to take whatever the next steps are for you in your situation, right? If you get a deal that's a sweet rental, it'll motivate you to go figure out how you're going to finance it, to go figure out who's going to do the rehab, to go figure out all those things that people are churning their wheels over all the time that, it's hard to figure out unless you have a deal that you're working on. So this is going to give you that motivation and push you in the direction, right? Because it's the key to success anyway. If you find that good deal, you'll get there.
Yeah. You find a good deal, you're going to find the financing for it. You're going to find a partner, maybe you're going to be able to wholesale it or whatever. You find a good deal, you're going to get the money, you're going to get all that stuff's going to come together if you just go and get the good deal. Right. Yeah, on the BiggerPockets webinars, I teach a webinar every week on BiggerPockets. David Green here teaches webinars. And that's what we talk about all the time is like, once you know how to identify good deals, like get a lead funnel, and it's not that complicated. You can do direct mail like you did, or you could do, there's lots of ways. You could do driving for dollars. You could connect with wholesalers, tell everybody you know about real estate, which we didn't harp on that, but I meant to, and then we moved on, is like, if you're listening to this show, tell everybody you know what you're doing, like that you want to be in real estate. Because people will naturally come to you, just like they did for Henry here. Anyway, filter them through your funnel, and then you figure out what to do with it at that point, because you have options. Great deals give you options, and so
absolutely,
yeah, your story is a perfect example of that. Hey, what do you wish you would have known, Henry, when you got started that you know now? Like what, like other than find a great deal, like what advice could you get a new investor right now and say, hey, do this?
So I would say the most difficult part about real estate investing is finding contractors and managing contractors, which is not something that I would have thought was difficult going into it. I have, I would say that there's been plenty of situations where not having a contractor lined up and ready to go has cost me money on the front side, right? Because your holding times are much longer, and it takes time to vet a good contractor. So I would have spent more time trying to understand that part of the business and trying to understand how to find a good contractor and understanding how to set your contractors up for success. The first deal I didn't have a spec sheet or anything. I just walked contractors through and said, I want to do this, and this. And all that's great on the walkthrough, but then when they actually start doing the work and they forget what you said, right?
Oh my gosh, so true.
And so, yeah, little things like that have cost me time and money. And if I would have known those things on the front side and gotten educated enough to know the right approach to finding a good contractor, I think it would have helped me a lot more.
The contractor thing is so much like, that quote, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. Like right. The contractor world is exactly why that is such an important quote. Like if you just do the work up front to do the right things for like project management in any field, doesn't matter. It could be computers or it could be real estate, or it could be anything. Project management in general, the more work you do up front to keep things organized and to vet the right people on your team that are going to be working with you, the easier the whole rest of it is. Even though the rest of it takes up 90% of the time, it's that first 10% of about the time if you just do that right. A real life story. Like I've been doing this now for 14 years now, I think, in real estate. Still and trying to get better at this. Though still on Friday night last week, it was 10 o'clock at night, and I was driving around looking for an ATM machine to get cash to give to some random contractor guy who wanted to get paid because somebody on my team said he'd get paid and he didn't get paid. And I was like, what am I doing? I have been doing this now for 14 years. How did I get here? And I was like, oh, because I didn't do the upfront work required that would have enabled me not to do that. And so I was punished And rightfully so, because I didn't do the upfront work needed to sharpen my axe.
Yep.
Isn't that the way it
Absolutely.
goes?
David, were you going to say
Isn't that
something?
the way it
Sorry.
goes? Yeah, like I just think like you have such a good attitude, Brandon, that you acknowledge this is my fault because most people would have found someone else to blame, right?
Yeah.
It's the contractor's fault for needing money. It's my team member's fault for telling him he'd get paid.
Yep.
It's the real estate's fault for being this way. But really, it's exactly that. I look at it like there's like stuff's going to happen in a project. Like water is going to come down this chute, right? And if I don't have a place cut out for that water to go to, it's going to spill over me. And eventually it's going to cover me and I'm going to drown in it if I don't prepare for it coming. Problems will happen in business. People will need to get paid. People won't show up. Things will go wrong. When you take the time up front to put contingencies in place and a plan in place and train people for what are we going to do when this happens, that water has somewhere to go and you don't feel like you're drowning. When you're lazy or you don't respect that there's a lot of work that's going to go into this, you just say, I'll deal with it when it comes. And then you get caught up in this flood and you're like, that was horrific. I don't ever want to do this again. And if you think about Henry, his whole system is carving out a place for that water to go. He fills out a bunch of deals from his direct mail and his SEO and his phone rings, and these deals come in. He jumps in right away and he filters them and he finds the 3 out of the 50 he can work with. Then he puts them along one of those paths that he's already carved out. Here's my criteria for buy and hold. Here's my criteria for flip. Here's my criteria to give it to another investor. So Henry never feels overwhelmed and freaked out and like, I just can't take it. But somebody else would if they didn't prepare the same way that he did. So what I call is like what I'm describing right now is making a place for the water to go. That's your funnel, that's your system, that's your business, whatever you want to call it. You've got criteria in place and people that are trained and all the little pieces you need. And then the deals would be his phone ringing with someone to call. That's all you need. You find a way to find deals, you find a thing to do with the deals when they come, and you end up with a whole bunch of wealth and a really cool life. And it's just those two things you got to work on. And if people could get, I see Henry smiling because you're like, yes, that's exactly right. If people could get that in their understanding that to be good at real estate investing, to be good at selling houses, to be good at whatever you're doing, you find a bunch of leads, you figure out what to do with them, you proactively prepare for what's going to happen when they come, you will have a really good business.
Absolutely. 100%. It's real estate is just so super powerful and not extremely difficult. It takes work, right? It takes effort. It takes hustle. It takes a never quit mentality, but anyone can do it, right? If you are willing to put in the work and you have the mentality, you can change your life, and not just your life. You can change the life of people around you and stimulate your economy. And there's just so many positives. And I want to share that message with as many people as possible.
That's so good. So true. So true. All right. So Henry, let's go over to the next segment of the show because I want to go a little bit deeper. It's time for the Triple D, the Deal Deep Dive.
Deal Deep Dive.
I don't know if I can say Triple D because, what's his name on the Food Network might have that thing trademarked, but I'm going to do it anyway. Time for well, go ahead.
I was going to say, you could dye your beard blonde.
I could be
on it. Yeah, it'd be.
I'm doing it. All right. So time for the Deal Deep Dive. Henry, we're going to dive deep into one particular property that you've bought or a deal you've done of some kind and get to know it a little bit more intimately, if you will. So let's fire a bunch of questions. You got something in mind that we can dive into?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Question number 1 for me then. What kind of property is it and where's it located?
This is, so we'll talk about that 8 unit. That's 4 duplexes. It is multifamily,
Okay.
4 duplexes and 2 empty lots.
All right. And that's in Arkansas, right?
Yes, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
All right.
How did you find it?
I found it through hustle. So I was my partner and I were out driving for dollars one day. And we came across an apartment building that looked like the roof was having some trouble. And so we had added that to our driving for dollars list. But because we were mainly only looking for singles and duplexes, but because this building looked pretty dilapidated, I looked into it as soon as we got back home. And so I pulled up the county records and I found the owner, and I happened to pull up the deed as well because I didn't want to mail a P.O. box. I wanted to see if I could find an actual address to mail. So I pulled up the deed to see if I could find an actual address. And what I found on that deed was it had the stamp from the title agent at the closing company that they closed with. And she was the same title agent that we used to close all of our deals. And so I said, well, maybe I'll call her and see if she knows the guy. And so she's been in the business for years. So I called her. I said, hey, Brandy, looking at this deal you closed, umpteen years ago with so-and-so. Do you know this person? And she was like, oh yeah, I know him. He's a good friend. So she was like, you want to talk to him? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So she called him, told him we were interested in buying this apartment building, and set up a meeting for us.
Wow.
And so we went and sat down. My business partner and I went and sat down with this gentleman and talked through that building, and it worked out that we were not able to purchase that building. So right at the end of that lunch meeting, my partner and I was like, well, do you have anything else you'd be willing to sell? And he was like, well, I got some duplexes, but they're bad. You don't want those. And I'm like, no, we probably do. We probably do. And so we got up from that meeting and we drove over to these really rundown duplexes on this, cul-de-sac street. And he said he was willing to sell them if we would buy them at what he owes the bank on them. So he just wanted to get out.
Okay.
And they were bad. They were falling apart. But 4 duplexes and 2 empty lots. I say they're empty lots. There were 6 duplexes, but 2 of them burned down because drugs are bad. So, and so we were able to, that's how we found them, was through him. And so, we went through the purchase process from there.
All right. So how much did you pay for it?
We paid $200,000.
Okay.
And how did you negotiate that price?
Yep. So that was a struggle. He said he just wanted to pay off the bank, but didn't want to tell us what it was. And so we made an initial offer of like 110, which is crazy low. And they shot it down. And so we went back and forth maybe 3 or 4 times and landed on 200,000, which is what he needed to pay off the bank. So we bought it for 200,000 and it needed about, I think we budgeted 140,000 for renovations.
Oh, okay. So how did you fund that entire thing then?
Yeah. So, small regional bank, we went to them with the deal. And because we were buying it for such a good deal, and we were putting about 140 into it, they wanted to see it. So they actually came out and they toured the property, and we showed them and told them what we were going to do to renovate it and what we thought rents would be when we got done. And so we were able to buy that for 200 with 140 renovation budget, and we put 10% down.
So they actually wrapped the renovation in there, and you just paid 10% of the whole entire thing down.
We paid 10% of the purchase price.
I love it, dude. That's amazing.
And they funded 100% of the rehab?
Yes, sir.
Boom.
So
yes,
good.
Sir.
So
this
good.
is a good time to be borrowing money, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you end up doing with this? Because I'm sure this sounds a little different than just a standard deal.
Yeah. So we still have it. And the plan was always to make it a long-term rental, right? And so we renovated, we've renovated 6 of the 8 units. The other 2 are starting construction right now.
Okay.
And so we're renting, average rents at this place are $725 to $750 a door. So we've got 6 units rented at about that rate. In a couple of months, we'll have 8 units rented at that rate. And then the plan from there is to the benefit to the empty lots is they're zoned for multifamily up to 24 units. So we're going to try to stick as many units as we can on those other 2 lots. And so we were able to buy a great deal for very little capital down. That's already cash flowing at 6 units. That's going to even get better with 8 units, and then we'll build as well. So I'll kind of get my feet wet in some new construction.
That's because you bought somebody else's problem.
That's right.
That's exactly what you did.
That's right. And we asked. He wasn't even going to show it to us. You just, whenever you're meeting with somebody who's in this business, ask them what they got. They might have something. They might have something straight for you.
Isn't that funny that just you'll hear people say there's no deals, and then Brandon will say, well, how many people have you talked to about real estate? And they're like, well, why would I talk to people when there's no deals?
Right. Right. I mean, we basically had a meeting where we decided we weren't going to buy the thing we went to have the meeting about.
Yep.
But because we spoke up and said, well, what else you got? We landed probably our best deal.
You know,
Oh, that just scares me as to how many chances I might have missed something.
I know, me
like
too.
that.
Yep. I know. I actually, one of the strategies I teach on webinars sometimes that's a really easy thing for new investors to find deals is go on Craigslist on like, set a reminder on your phone every Monday morning, go on Craigslist and go to the for rent section and go look for every one of the mom and pop landlords listing their properties for rent. You always know it's a mom and pop because it's like 2 lines and like a crappy picture, right? And you call them and just say, hey, I'm not looking to rent your property, but I'm a new investor and I'm looking to buy something. Any chance you want to sell that? Now, chances are they're not going to want to, but what do we know? We know that A, they're a real estate investor, and B, they're probably not very good at listings, which means they might not be a good landlord.
Right.
And so, and then the third question, if they say no, like, I mean, it's a win-win either way, because either if they say no, fine, you built a relationship, you have a phone number of a landlord now in your area that owns property. If they say no on that one, that the question you just asked is perfect there. Okay, well, do you have anything else? And chances are they're gonna go, well, there is that one piece of junk property I hate, but you're not going to want that one. And so like one phone call could lead you to a dozen or 24 leads because that person owns 24 properties. And now you get to find out what their problem is and you get to take it. So simple strategies like that. And then combined with what you just said about asking if they have anything else. So powerful. What's cool also about this is interesting is, we talk a lot about the BRRRR strategy at BiggerPockets. The buy a property, you rehab it, you rent it out, and then you refinance it, get a whole new loan, and then you repeat the process. Now, the reason we talk about this, the number one question I get about BRRRR is, and I don't know, Dave, if you're the same way, but why wouldn't you just get one bank loan on the whole thing? Because what you did is that you didn't have to even refinance it. You got a loan that had the rehab into it, and they just made it one thing. That's like better than BRRRR. It's like the BRRRR plus method. But it's really hard to find those banks. But the banks, they're the local community banks that are going to be the ones that can do the better than BRRRR strategy there. That's cool.
Absolutely.
Love that. All right. So finally, at the end of the day, what was like the outcome in terms of, what do you think the property is worth today?
Sure.
What kind of cash flow are you expecting from it now?
Sure. I think it's worth somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000.
Wow.
If you count the buildings and you count the lots, who knows what it'll be worth once we actually develop those other 2 lots. So, I mean, it's just been a good deal.
Yeah. Awesome.
And like I said, average rents are $725 to $750. One of the duplexes is a 1-bed, 1-bath. So the rents are a little lower on that one, but the other ones are 2 1s and 2 2s.
And the fact that now you own this property that's already been rehabbed, your CapEx, like your capital expenditures and your repairs should be lower long term. You might have a few kinks to work out. There always is at the beginning of a rental of a new unit that's been rehabbed, but you should have a fairly low expenses for years going forward now.
Right.
So cool.
And also this property is, we own most of the street. I think there's only 3 houses on the street that we don't own. So we were really able to kind of change the whole dynamic of the neighborhood by rehabbing these properties, which helps us keep the rents up.
Yeah. So good. All right. Last question, David, from the deal deep dive.
Well, what did you learn about this deal?
Oh man. Drugs are bad. That's for sure. That's one thing we definitely learned. I think this deal has gone on longer than we've wanted it to from a rehab perspective. So I think, I'd say we got this deal early enough in our career, in our real estate investing journey, that we didn't have the ducks in a row on the contractor and rehab side. We spent a lot of time vetting a lot of contractors and we're on our 3rd one now working on this same project. And so we've kind of taken learnings from each of those scenarios and we're trying to be better at being able to do rehabs on projects, especially when you have them at a large scale. So like I said, we're doing spec sheets, and I'm sending those spec sheets out before I even meet the contractors there. Like, I want you to get a sense for what you're getting yourself into before you get there. so that we're not wasting each other's time, and so that you understand kind of what the size of the prize is for you before you even get there. Those are things I just didn't think to do on the front side, um, and so most of the lessons learned are from that contractor perspective there.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was one of my favorite deal deep dives we've done yet. That's super legit deal. It reminds me a lot of the fourplex that I bought for my daughter Rosie. We bought that one for dirt cheap, had to rehab it. Now we're getting $750 rents out of each unit, and yeah, it's very similar. Cool. All right, man. Well, before we get on to the last final couple segments of the show, I'm curious, what's the future look like for you? I mean, are you still working a full-time job somewhere? Is this your full-time gig? And then what's it look like going forward?
Yeah, I'm still a full-time employee, man. So the real estate is still a side hustle. I am trying to move into small multifamily. I say small multifamily, 5 units and up, to as many as possible, really. So I'm halfway into Matt Fairclough's book on raising private capital,
Nice.
and so the next steps for me, I've already started marketing for larger multifamily buildings, and so now I'm at the stage where I'm trying to figure out how to source the money for these larger deals, because I want to start scaling a little higher.
Super cool. Super cool, man. All right. Well, with that, let's head over to the next segment of the show. The world famous Fire Round.
Fire round.
This is the part of the show where we fire some questions directly at you from the BiggerPockets forums to see what you got to say. So let's do that now. Number 1 comes from Brent Davidson. When you're hiring a contractor, this is actually perfect for today's thing. How do you handle payments? Like, I know you're not supposed to pay for the whole job up front, but do you pay for something up front?
Yeah. So I've got a couple different scenarios. So I've been lucky enough to find a contractor who puts his skin in the game, and I don't have to pay him until he's completely done. So in that scenario, I don't pay anything. But most contractors want some form of down payment from me. And so what I try to do is, I'm fine paying a down payment, but what I ask them to do is to show me which line items that down payment is going to cover, so that when they're asking for their next draw, it's easy for me to say, okay, I paid you X down, and that covered these things, and these things are now done. So I'm okay paying you the draw, and then I make them tell me what that's going to be for.
All right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'll just add on to that 99% of the complaints I'm getting from people I love right now saying, I did everything you said in your system, except I paid the contractor up front. What do I do now? I don't even know if there's an answer for what do you do now. Like you just can't. It's like trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once you paid them, you're committed. You just got to trust, right? Stop doing that. If you really, really like that contractor, okay. But let them do it. Give them a little bit of money. Let them do some work. And give them some more money promptly. Don't make them wait 2 weeks. That's not cool. But yeah, don't squeeze out the toothpaste and then call me and say, how do I get it back in the tube, or anyone else, because science has not solved that.
Most of your deposit when you first start goes towards materials for them to get started. I just make them tell me what materials they're going to get.
And then you buy it.
And I make sure either I'll buy it or I'll make sure that that's what they got.
I always get annoyed that, like, when contractors who I'm paying material, because a lot of times I'll buy all the material ahead of time, like at a Lowe's, I'll just go get a big bulk order. Then they still ask for, half down. I'm like, but I'm buying all the material. You literally have no expenses other than your employees, which if you get the work done, you get paid, at the end of the week or whatever, every couple of weeks. And still it just irritates me. And I know why they're doing it. It's because they have to pay for last week's work that they don't have money for. And so they're using your down payment as salaries or whatever for their team or for their beer for the weekend. I don't know, whatever. Drives me insane. So, the one, if there's like one trick I've learned with contractors that just works so well, it's like they gotta always be hungry. And then if you do your job and pay them responsibly and quickly, like you said, David, like for example, if it's like, hey, you get $2,000 when the carpet is done, it is amazing how fast that carpet will get done when you hold to that rule of you get paid the $2,000 when your carpet's done. They will work till midnight. They will bring in a friend to work, to get that carpet done by midnight because they want that check from you. And then if you pay them quickly, then you're training them. I just get this done, I get money. I get this done, I get money. And so they work faster because they know that.
I don't know why that's so hard for us though, because
I
Brandon, you
know.
have dogs. Do you notice your dogs are more obedient when you have a treat in your hand?
Yeah.
Not to
Yeah.
compare contractors to dogs. I make this mistake a lot, okay? But it's like this with little kids. You want a little kid to do something, and you say, you can do this if, and you say you'll get to do something else you want. All of a sudden, it's so much easier to obey.
Last night,
it's exactly like that.
last night I have carrots. So like I've Rosie refuses to eat carrots or any vegetable at all. So I have a piece of carrot, a chocolate chip, a piece of carrot, a chocolate chip, piece of carrot, chocolate chip. And I teach her, you eat one
There you go.
carrot bite, you get to eat the chocolate chip. You know what she did? She went and picked up every single piece of the carrot, shoved them all in her mouth at one time, swallowed it, and then grabbed a handful of chocolate chips and ate it. And I'd been trying for an hour to get her to eat her vegetables. And all it took was a little bit of a reward. They just got it done.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how much effort would it have taken for you to get her to eat those carrots without the chocolate chip?
Yeah,
like
it's
100 times more. Yeah, that's there you go. You heard it here first. Carrots, contractors, and chocolate chips.
Carrots, then chocolate chips. Got it.
That sounds like a new book from BiggerPockets. Carrots, contractors, and chocolate
Contractors
chips.
and chocolate chips.
I would buy that book. How to handle contractors. This is a great idea.
Folks, listen to this podcast because Brandon's going to take credit for that quote. And as soon as we wait like a year from now, he's like, no one's going to remember David.
No one's gonna remember it.
He's going to jump on it.
There you go. It's
All right,
mine
next
now.
question.
The CCC. It's called the CC principle, actually. The CCC principle. That you
The
heard
four
that?
C's, yeah.
The chocolate. Yeah, you're right. The four. I call it the four
Chocolate
C's
chip.
principle, and I just made that up.
He's already named it. That's funny. He's like texting Ryan Murdoch, hey, trademark this really
trademark-
fast.
yeah, the four
before
C's
David's
principle.
team can get on it.
Yep. Anyway, all right.
All right,
That
next
was a
question
long
from
fire
Roman
round.
in Philly. How do you go about finding new tenants? What websites are you getting most of your leads from? Thank you.
Yep. So all I do for new tenants is so I use Cozy as my property management system, cozy.co, and Cozy syndicates. So I create the listing on Cozy. It syndicates to Trulia and Realtor and Hotpads, I believe, and then I put an ad on Zillow. That's it. I don't put a sign in the yard. I don't use Craigslist. I don't use Facebook. I just use those sources, and I get enough leads to filter through. And then I do open house style showings. So I pick a time when I will be there, and everybody has to come at that time. And kind of what I've learned doing that is I try to get there a little early, and I don't stay much long past the time I said I would be there. So if I said I'd be there at 1 and the showing's done at 1:10, I might stay till 1:15 and then I'm gone. Cause if people show up late, that could potentially be a problem for me later. Maybe they'll be late on rent. So I like it when people are punctual. I like to utilize my time well. And so I make everybody come at one time. And if it doesn't work for them, I'll give them another time the next week when I'll be there or the next couple of days. But I don't just meet every individual tenant at the place.
And that takes a little bit of faith to be that way because you always wonder, like, what if I miss the perfect one,
Yeah.
But all my experience with having like good employees or good tenants or good anythings is they don't let something really small deter them.
Yep.
Right? Like if they really want that place, they're going to show up when you tell them to be there. They're going to be there on time. They're going to come with a good attitude and make a good impression.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. All right, next one. Next one. I like this one. So how do you, this is the standpoint they're asking about, like motivated sellers when you're talking with sellers, but how do you make yourself more likable? How do you get a seller to sell to you and not to somebody else? Any tricks on that?
I think I'm just naturally a people person, and and I think that helps. I always try to keep in the forefront of my mind that this is a people business. It's not a real estate business, right? Real estate is the way that money is made, but people are the vehicle for getting us there, right? And so I make sure that I try to take the time to understand what the situation is, because we're buying situations, right? We're not buying houses, right? If we were just buying houses, they'd call a real estate agent, right? But there's definitely a situation going on, and I want to try to sympathize and empathize with these people as I'm dealing with that. So I sit down with them and I just talk and I just listen. And sometimes I know the second I get there that I'm not going to be able to buy the house, but that doesn't stop me from trying to understand what their problem is. There have been multiple scenarios where we've done things to help people, that had nothing to do with buying their house, and we didn't buy their house, but it was just the right thing to do, right? And
Like what?
one of the things, there was a lady who was suffering, it looked like, from uh, she had cancer at some point, and she had this immaculate yard. I mean, looked like a professional landscaper had maintained this yard for years. I mean, it was just, everything was well groomed. And we went to look at her house, and she just wanted more than what made sense for the home. But while we were talking to her, part of the reason she was wanting to sell was because there was a lawnmower repair shop behind her, and they were running big machines, and the carbon monoxide it puts off really made her more sick, and she just couldn't run her lawnmower to then take care of her yard, because she just wouldn't feel well. And so, kind of, one of the things we did there was, even though I couldn't buy her house, we went out and we bought her an electric lawnmower so that she could
Oh,
take care of her yard, and we dropped that off to her. And
that's cool, man.
it meant a lot it meant a lot to her. And if you think about it from a people perspective, it's just a good thing to do. But also, I've since gone back and checked on her just to see if she was all right, and she told me about a deal around the corner. And I went around the corner and knocked on the door for a house that ended up being a really, really good deal. We didn't get to buy it. Another investor, actually, a friend of mine, ended up buying it. But had I showed up at her house sooner, I might have been able to buy that deal, right? And had we not done what we've done, you might not have some of those opportunities. And like I said, it's a people business. People talk, right? You never know who somebody you're dealing with, whether you're not buying their house, might tell, all right, and have to call you. I get word of mouth referrals all the time, and have bought several properties from word of mouth referrals. So I just try to find a way to help everyone. And if you think about each of your appointments as an opportunity for you to help someone, and figure out a way to do that, whether that means buying their house or not, like, the success will come.
Yeah, really good. Really, really good, dude. All right, well, let's get on to the next segment of the show, the last segment of the show, and this is our Famous Four. All right, the Famous Four is the part of the show where we ask the same 4 questions we've asked every guest every week, and now we're going to ask you. So, Mr. Henry Washington. By the way, I mentioned earlier a guy named Mike McAlevitz on the BiggerPockets Business Podcast. Just a big shout out to that episode. Was so good. It transformed a lot of how I operate my business. So I just want to recommend everybody go listen to the show in general and subscribe to it and all that, but go look up the episode with Mike McAlevitz. It was so just inspiring, yet reminding me of some stuff that I just wasn't doing right in my business. So check that out. That's why, again, the BiggerPockets Business Show is so good to listen to, because we are running businesses. So yes, we're investing in real estate, but we run real estate businesses. Kind of like a guy who owns a bakery. Yes, they're baking cakes, but they own a bakery, and we own a real estate business. So check it out. And anyway, side note there. But now, Henry Washington, number 1, favorite real estate related book.
I would have to say, honestly, right now has been the book on raising capital.
Cool.
Wow, and that's only having read half of it.
Having read half of it, it's really been. I mean, I think it does a good job of kind of explaining some really what can be difficult subjects on raising money in a way that makes sense for everybody. And so, yeah, absolutely, I'm definitely enjoying it.
That's awesome.
Good job, Matty F.
Very cool.
All right, what about your favorite business book?
Favorite business book. So it's a little different. I don't even know if you'd classify it as a business book, but I've really enjoyed. I really enjoyed The Alchemist. Not necessarily a business book, but just a great book for motivation and understanding that if you're doing the things that you are meant to do, then the opportunities will come, and you'll be able to realize the things that you want to realize in your life and in your business.
I really want to write a book someday, just like The Alchemist, because it was such a powerful book.
I loved it.
Yeah, I'm I got to write The Alchemist 2, Revenge of the Alchemist. It's gonna be great. All right,
that's hilarious. Revenge of the Alchemist.
Number 3, David.
It sounds like The Office, like the Michael Scarn.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Sound. All right, Henry, what are some of your hobbies?
Oh man, hobbies. I've got I've got a 15-month-old daughter, and she is so much
So
fun.
no hobbies. All right.
She is so much fun. So I'm really enjoying spending time with her. I play basketball. I haven't played in a couple of months now, but I used to play quite a bit. So I enjoy doing that and just, hanging out with my wife. We have a good time.
Very cool. All right, number 4. Henry, what do you think separates successful real estate investors from all those who give up, fail, or just plain don't get started?
Yeah, man. We talked about it earlier. It's mindset, right? Being open and willing to understand if you're first getting started that you probably don't have the right mindset, and being open to understanding and changing that mindset, and realizing that there probably isn't a problem that you can't figure out a way to solve on some level. So having the right mindset and the right attitude is what really sets apart those successful investors.
So good.
Beautiful. This has been very good, Henry. And by the way, did we ask you how many units you have right now?
Yep.
Yeah,
40 doors. Yep. 6 to 10 flips a year.
How long ago did you get started?
Just over two years ago.
There you go. 40
awesome.
doors in a little over 2 years. Awesome.
So
So
cool.
for people want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
The best place to reach me is probably Instagram. So you can find me at Independence Realty Group on Instagram, or you can shoot me an email at jjwash45@gmail, or my business email, which is henry@independencerealtygroupnwa.com.
Very cool. All right. Well, I'm going to go follow you on Instagram.
I think that's what Brandon and I were actually both doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing
Brief
right
pause
there.
right
Yep. Very cool. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Really, really good stuff. And I look forward to kind of seeing where you're headed in the future. Without, I guess, further ado, David Green, do you want to take us out?
Yep. If you want to follow us on Instagram, he is Beardy Brandon. I am David Green 24. Brandon's trying to get to 100,000 followers, so please unfollow him and go follow me. This is a socialistic competition that we're having right now, and I need some help. Just kidding. And then Henry, you were Independence Realty Group on Instagram?
Independence Realty Group. Yes, sir.
All right, cool, man. This is David Green for Brandon Revenge of the Alchemist Turner. Signing out. That was so funny.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.